Happy Families podcast. It's the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now.
Our job as parents is to say, okay, so something bad has occurred. The consequences are ugly, yucky, horrible. We don't like the consequences. But what's the belief underlying that?
And now here's the stars of our show, my mum and dad.
Hello, this is Dr. Justin Coulson, the author of 6 books about raising families that are happy. And I'm here with my very sore wife, Mrs. Happy Families, Kylie, giggling because a couple of weeks ago we were cheering you on because you've joined the gym and you've been doing box jumps. Well, you did your very first ever box jumps.
I don't know if we can call them box jumps. They are a jump, but they're not really a box.
You're jumping onto a box. The box was only a couple of centimetres high, but you were doing your first ever box jumps. And today you've walked in here to do the podcast with me.
I don't know if you can call it a walk.
You sort of staggered in because your last trip to the gym, you doubled the height of your box jump.
I did double the height. Yay for me, I doubled.
That's right. And then you showed me when you got home how box jumpy you were, and now you can't walk. Isn't the gym great? Isn't this fantastic, this fitness kick? Doesn't it feel amazing?
Well, I tried to just roll out today. I didn't even do any hardcore exercise, but
too much pain.
Oh, so pain.
I'm so proud of you. So impressed. This is what resilience is, right? I mean, so we're talking about resilience because book club has recommenced. We do 4 weeks of book club once every term as part of our Happy Families membership. So if you're a member of Happy Families, which you can get all the information at happyfamilies.com.au. It's like $12 a month or $17 if you'd like to be a premium member. You get to sit in on book club and review one of my books each term. I don't know what we're going to do when we run out of books.
I was about to say, does that mean I'm going to be a widow again and you're going to head off and...
I'm going to have to write more books.
Write more books.
Maybe. So at the moment we're working through 9 ways to a resilient child. Last week was book week 1. In the podcast we talked about some of the myths of resilience. But in book club, we talked about how building identity in our children is one of the most surefire, powerful ways that we can create resilience in our children. When they know who they are, they're much more likely to be resilient. And there's loads of research to support this idea that teaching kids about their roots and helping them to figure themselves out over time, which, that just happens in life, they become more resilient. And we also talked about psychological flexibility, which is just a fascinating idea.
I'm not feeling very flexible at all.
No, well, not physically, maybe psychologically. But we need to have a conversation about book club for tonight. And by the way, if you missed last week, it's okay. You can still join Happy Families and become a member today and join in book club tonight. We would love to have you there. So, sorry, I'm saying tonight, but it's tomorrow night. I've got my days all mixed up. It's Wednesday night and tonight's Tuesday, so don't try and get on a book club tonight because that would be a bad idea. So tomorrow night, what are we talking about?
Jam-packed tomorrow night. We've got 2 really big topics to kind of work our way through: self-control and stinking thinking.
Okay, so we build resilience by building self-control, and we build resilience by overcoming stinking thinking.
Yeah, so I was thinking you talk about the Walter Mischel experiment that was done back in the 1960s. Everybody knows the marshmallow experiment, but can you just talk us through it a little bit? There was over 600 kids who participated in this, all around the age of 4. But what did they actually have to do?
All right, here's the deal. Marshmallow for you. You can either wait, and I'll give you another one if you wait, or you can eat it now. When I come back, I'll give you another one, so then you'll have 2. But stay in here and stay in the chair till I come back, okay? All right.
So everybody's heard of the marshmallow experiment. It's like one of the most world famous experiments in the history of psychology. And the idea basically is children around about the age of 4, 5 and 6 were brought into Walter Mischel's laboratory. From memory, I think it was at Stanford University. And what Mischel would do is say to them, I've got a marshmallow. In fact, it wasn't always a marshmallow. Sometimes it was an Oreo cookie or, some kids actually wanted sultanas. Because, hey, people are people. Some people have their preferences. And what he essentially said was, I'll tell you what, I'll give this to you now and you can eat it, or I've got to pop out of the office for a minute. But when I come back in here, if it's still there, if you haven't eaten it, I'll double it. I'll give you 2. So they got 2 cookies, 2 marshmallows, whatever it is. And what Michelle's research showed was that, some kids just eat it on the spot, right? They just gobble it down super fast. And there's some funny YouTubes of where people have reenacted this. And
I was going to say, I think that this is probably an experiment that's been reenacted in a lot of lounge rooms.
Yeah, it's
around
so
the
much
world.
fun. And what Michelle found was that some kids ate it really quickly and other kids didn't. In fact, when I interviewed Ethan Cross for our Parenting in Perspective series on this podcast, which was about 100 episodes now, it was back at about episode number 115, 120. We'll put it in the show notes. What Ethan Cross was Walter Michel's student. He was a PhD student under Walter Mischel, and he talks about being involved in these self-control experiments. But a lot of people are like, oh, well, hang on. That means that if I do this experiment in my living room and my kids eat the marshmallow while I'm out of the room, that means that they've got no self-control and they've got no resilience, and their destiny is inside that marshmallow. They're gone. And some parents will think, well, if my kids don't eat the marshmallow, then they're going to be superstar success stories because they have got self-control.
So what did Walter actually find, like his findings?
Yeah, so in a nutshell, what he found is that, and he tracked these kids over the decades, or at least over a little more than a decade. And what he found was that on average, the kids that ate the marshmallow, they had less self-control. And as they got older, they did less well in school. They did less well in terms of their social relationships. They did less well in their careers. And there's even another study that has come out of Dunedin. It's called the Dunedin study. It's all about self-control. It's followed people for well over 30 years now. And the researchers have found that the kids that score lowest on what we call trait self-control, that is, they're just not very in charge of their ability to control themselves, they do worse at school, they do worse in their relationships, they're more likely to take drugs, drink alcohol, end up in jail, have premarital sex and end up pregnant. The results of lacking self-control, I mean, it kind of makes sense, right? The question is, does the marshmallow tell us who's going to end up in jail and who's going to end up as the CEO? And that's where the answer is absolutely no, it doesn't.
What I found interesting as I read a little bit more about the experiment was that if he spent some time working with these children and then put them through the experiment again by teaching them some, really simple techniques, they were actually able to withstand the marshmallow for up to 15 minutes in comparison to the 3 or 4 minutes that they'd previously been subjected to.
And that's why Ethan Cross, in my conversation with him about this, he just said, you can't, and I've written this in the book, which obviously I wrote a few years ago now, you can't put somebody's destiny inside that little ball of white, fluffy, sugary gelatine stuff. You just can't say that your destiny is in the marshmallow, because self-control is something that can be taught.
There's some hope. There's some hope right there. We can learn this skill.
So I guess the take-home message here is that self-control can be taught. We don't have time to talk about how, but that's in the book. It's in 9 Ways to a Resilient Child, which you can get online at happyfamilies.com.au. And if you do it, you get the workbook for free, by the way. Just go to happyfamilies.com.au and you can get all the info there. And tomorrow night in Book Club, you're going to talk specifically about what I've highlighted in terms of the strategies for building self-control on our kids so that they don't end up in prison and instead they do end up doing well at school and having successful, resilient lives.
I'm really looking forward to that conversation. So up next, let's talk about stinking thinking.
It's the Happy Families Podcast.
For a happier family, try a Happy Families membership, because a happy family doesn't just happen. Details at happyfamilies.com.au.
It's the Happy Families Podcast, the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now. And we have been talking about a couple of chapters that we're going to be discussing in Book Club tomorrow night. And
from 9 Ways to a Resilient Child, the book by me. Sorry, I was going to be really humble about it, and then I just thought, no, I've gone too far. I wrote it, and it's been one of the best-selling resilience books over the last few years in Australia for parents. It really been a very, very helpful book for a lot of people.
So our second topic is stinking thinking. I think this is something that we all struggle with, whether we're 3 or we're 33 or 103. We have these negative experiences happen in our lives, and it can be really easy for us to fall into the trap of negative thinking.
Yeah, and we talked with, I think her name was Taryn, just in episode 207 about taming that voice inside our own head as parents, because what if we say horrible things about ourselves and then the kids learn that? What we were really talking about was stinking thinking. So if you'd like to hear more about this idea, just go back to episode 207. We'll link to that in the show notes so that you can catch that. But I want to approach it really differently today based on what's written in the book.
So you talk about this ABC model, and you actually shared a really cool experience that you had with one of our children who had had a bad experience at school, and she came home and just lost the plot and said she was never going back to school again.
Yeah.
And you were able to talk her through this process using this ABC model. Can we kind of talk a little bit about what that is and how it looks?
Yeah, you bet. I won't mention our daughter and her experience at school. I'm going to change the experience up a bit because I think it's just quicker and easier for our purposes today. But A stands for adversity. So in life, everyone experiences adversity, and resilience is our ability to move past adversity, to experience that and grow from it, right? But if we've got this stinking thinking, what happens is adversity can sometimes crush us. It makes us feel like I'm never going to go back to school, or I'm no good. And that stinking thinking really starts to permeate. So we have this adversity that hits us. And let's use the example of this bad thing that happens is I'm a 9-year-old boy and I really want to spend some time with my friends this weekend playing and hanging out and doing really cool stuff. And so I make 3 phone calls to my 3 best friends, and all 3 of them say no. One of them is going to a birthday party for a cousin that I don't know, so it's not like I've been rejected or anything. They've got something else going on. Another one's got a family day at the beach, and the third one is in trouble and got grounded. Not that we would ever encourage that, but every family does things differently. And so poor little 9-year-old's like, I don't get to play with anyone. And so the consequence of this scenario is I've made 3 phone calls to my 3 best friends and I've still got no play dates. So that's the A and that's the C. We've got adversity, and the consequence is I'm lonely. What's the B stand for? Well, the B stands for belief. What do I believe about the situation? See, what happens when we've got stinking thinking is bad stuff happens. We experience a bad outcome, and then we start to, I guess, create a story, create a narrative, create this belief system that somehow it's about us. It's our fault. There's something horrible that's gone on here. And so the belief here for our 9-year-old little buddy might be that I'm unpopular. Nobody wants to play with me. Life isn't fair. I'm going to be isolated. Like, it just feels yuck for him. And so the adversity has created this belief, and he believes that the consequences are a result of this stinking thinking that's going on. Our job as parents is to say, okay, so something bad has occurred. The consequences are ugly, yucky, horrible. We don't like the consequences. But what's the belief underlying that? Did we create this bad outcome, or did something else happen outside of it? And when we understand the ABCs, we can start to, I guess, examine and fight against unproductive, unhelpful, stinking thinking.
I really like that. And I like that it kind of, there's a framework for us to work with. You talk about, negative attribution styles. It's a big word for me. and positive attribution styles. And we'll talk about a little bit about that in book club. But I thought one thing that you actually didn't mention in the book that I thought is really powerful, and we use it in our home most days, is, having an attitude of gratitude. And how important it is for us to recognize the positive things that are happening in our lives. And sometimes when we have a family member, or we all kind of, can fall into the trap at times of having that stinking thinking, by involving them in conversations where other people are able to acknowledge positive things happening, it helps to lift their thinking. I know as a parent, we've had nights where we're just like, today has sucked. It's just been an awful day. And then you listen to the kids one by one start to share the positive things that have happened. And you realize that through their eyes, today actually hasn't sucked at all. We've actually achieved some really cool things, but we get caught up in, the little things that didn't go right. And so I think gratitude, I can't put enough emphasis on gratitude and how important it is.
Yeah, where your attention goes, your energy flows. And stinking thinking just means that we're focused on all the, our attention is on all the horrible stuff that's going on in our lives. And the more we put our attention on that, the more energy is absorbed by that. And those negative things become energy vampires in our lives. We need lots of positive energy. And that comes from examining what our beliefs are. Did that bad thing happen today because there's something the matter with me, because I'm deficient, because I'm a loser? Sometimes our kids believe that. Sometimes they hear that either at school or tragically even in their own homes.
Or is it circumstantial?
Right. And if we can help them to understand that things are not all about them, that they're really impersonal, sometimes bad stuff just happens, or that it was a specific issue. It happened this time, But it didn't happen last weekend when you rang one of your buddies. In fact, you got to hang out with a couple of your friends at the park for a few hours.
Or maybe we can plan ahead next time and give families time.
Instead of calling them on Saturday morning or whatever it is. Yeah, that's right. And sometimes kids think, well, this is permanent. This is the way it's always going to be. But it isn't. If we can help them to understand that those beliefs are destructive, then suddenly different consequences come into their lives because their attention's going into a different place and their energy follows.
You know, I know how much you love me quoting you. I found a quote that I wanted to share.
You keep saying that. I don't. I feel a bit embarrassed by it, but that's fine. Quote me again. What did I say?
Optimism can change our attitudes, which changes our actions, which changes our reality.
Yeah, so let's have an optimistic attitude and life gets better. Is that what you're saying?
I didn't say it.
Is that what I'm saying? Hey, book club is tomorrow night. I keep getting that wrong. Book club is tomorrow night for our Happy Families members. We would love for you to become a Happy Families member. Become part of the family. You get to hang out with Kylie for the evening, talk about what's in the book. Even if you haven't bought the book yet, you'll still get loads out of the conversation, and you can grab the book plus the free workbook. Save $20. Just go to happyfamilies.com.au and get all the information there on both the book and the workbook and Happy Families memberships. We really appreciate you listening to the podcast. Thanks so much. We hope that this has been helpful. Take-home message.
Self-control can be taught.
Yeah.
And there's nothing like a good dose of gratitude to help with that stinking thinking.
And optimism. Let's be happy about life. Let's find the joy because it's there. We do hope that you've enjoyed the podcast. Share it with your friends. Jump on to Apple Podcasts and leave a rating and review so that other people can find out about it. Our numbers are growing, by the way. They've more than doubled since last year. And we were already excited last year. We're well and truly in the top 100 Australian-produced podcasts, and we're starting to knock on the door of the top 100 podcasts overall in this country. Just thought I'd throw that out there. And I think it's because of you, Mrs. Happy Families. Also, our executive producer, Craig Bruce, our producer, Justin Rulon from Bridge Media. We appreciate all the work that they put into the podcast, making it sound great. If you'd like more information about all the stuff we've talked about, you can get it at happyfamilies.com.au.